Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Artist's Toolkit. My name's Dan Curtis. I am an artist and arts educator from London in the UK. And it's so good to see so many of you. The chat is open on both YouTube and also streaming to Twitter/X. I see people coming in from New York City, from Idaho. Where else have we got? We've got Northern Ireland, we got the UK, we got France. This is great. People from all over. So welcome, welcome. And yeah, keep letting me know where you're coming in from. So this course is aimed at the early career artist beginning to navigate the strange landscapes of the art world. But also, if you're a bit more of an established artist, you've been going for a little while, this can be a good refresher as well. And I guess a recheck in with yourself about your processes and what your aims are going forward. So there should be something for everyone here. And this is the first of a two-part course. So we'll be doing this one this week, and then the second part next week, next Thursday, and same time with the same location here on YouTube Live. Yes, and also this is the kind of beginning of these long form courses for us, and this has all been made possible by the amazing Exchange Art, where I am currently working as head of artist and collector education, and they've made this all possible. So thank you so much to Exchange Art and Bonk Art Masters, an amazing artist selling platform. And it's also in conjunction with the Healthy Artist, which is the channel that we're on, and it's the bi-weekly podcast that I run with my good friend artist Martha Lamont. So if there's more you want to hear in this vein and about establishing yourself and keeping going in the art world, then go and check out the podcast. It streams everywhere where podcasts are: Apple, Spotify, everything else. Yeah. Okay, so that's the intros done. I'm super excited to share with you today the Artist's Toolkit. So let's get into it. As always, with the things I like to share on this channel, when it comes to the Artist's Toolkit, and the whole reason I'm talking about you having a toolkit, a set of tools that you can use to establish yourself and give yourself the best start in the art world, I really want to begin with a psychological and philosophical grounding to this whole process, really. I want to try and understand, before we think about the tools going in the toolbox, what the toolbox is itself as the object. Yeah, what's the foundation for the tools to go in? And I think that's really important for us as artists to get a really strong grip on the psychological and philosophical reasons that we are making, and that we're going to go and try and launch ourselves into the strange place of the art world. So there's three things I want to share that is going to build that psychological structure for you, that's going to build the toolbox for you to put your tools in. The first thing I want to say to begin this course is that there is actually no such thing as the art world. That might sound strange, but I think the way to think about it is, in fact, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small art worlds that are all overlapping with each other. And it's about you finding your place, your joy, your sustainable career within that. There isn't one, art king or queen, as much as we would like that they just impart their blessings upon us and we are now definitely artists, or we are now definitely successful. There's no one route to go and no one handing you the keys to the castle. Connected to that, therefore, the second thing I want to say is that as an artist, there is no career ladder. There isn't a traditional set of markers to reach as an artist. There's no promotions or no statuses that you can get to say you are now definitely successful. You are now definitely a real artist in the art world. And no one's coming to hand you that either. And, you can't fulfill certain criteria to create a career ladder for yourself. Connected to that, the third thing is, no one's coming to discover you. you're not going to be working away in your studio, in your shed, in the garden, in your little hobgoblin artist cave, and someone comes banging on the door and says, you are an undiscovered talent and I must give you your first solo show, and you start selling everywhere, and it all comes together because you've been, hiding away and you are become discovered. This idea of artists being discovered by great collectors or curators is something that comes up particularly in Western art history quite a lot. And at best it's a kind of myth, sort of an apocryphal story, and at worst it's like a manipulative lie to kind of create more of an authenticity around an artist's journey to make it easier to sell. But it's not real. You sometimes hear about stories of artists who went to the collector's house, or they went to the gallerist's door and banged on the door and said, this is my art, and it started like that. Realistically, that is not happening for you. Okay. And it really need to understand that that idea is just something that's entirely constructed for sales. So then, to recap this little section, this what is the toolkit, it is the toolbox, sorry. There's no such thing as the art world. There's no career ladder for you to follow, and no one's coming to discover you. Now, before you log off in sadness and say, I thought this was meant to be an encouragement, this discussion, I want you to know why these three things together are good news for you. Okay. These things are good news primarily because it means that you are 100% in control of your own creative journey. Because artists at their core are pioneers. We need to do things in the way that we want to do them. We don't want a path to follow that's exact, because we'd get so lost in that. And a lot of artists do when they try and fit themselves into a format that is not for them. I asked a question the other day to Will Jarvis, who was previously head of an amazing gallery in London called the Sunday Painter. And now he runs an amazing art app called Gertrude, where artists are kind of be represented and selling their work. And I said to him, he was talking about the idea that in so much of the art world is about playing the game and playing into the games and the ideas of these entrenched systems of the art world. And I said, how do you not, if you feel sort of almost like in your core, like rejecting this idea of trying to commodify and gamify yourself to create this myth around yourself to sort of sell work, how do you keep going with integrity and authenticity and all of that? And he said to me that the artists that he felt that have survived the longest and gone on the longest are those who continue to be pioneers, that they choose their own journey to move forward in. And I think that's a really important thing. And again, that's a privilege. That's a good bit of news for us as artists. And it also means these things are good news because it means that every artist's journey is going to look radically different from every other artist. So, um, the the difference in types of people. Let's say, for example, a stay-at-home mother with two kids who makes her art on the kitchen table and organizes shows within her area with other artists in her city and sells her work like that. That is an art career. Yeah, that is a brilliant art career. Another example could be an artist represented by a mid-tier gallery that has one or two shows a year with that gallery and elsewhere, and then the rest of the time they are 2 or 3 days a week teaching art in a secondary school. That is also an art career. You could also be working in a massive warehouse, have 50 staff and producing ginormous public artworks for buildings and parks and things like that. That is also an art career, and they are all as legitimate as the other. No one is more successful, no one is more real. Every one of those is important, and every one of those is a legitimate journey. It's also worth remembering that when we come to the space of the art world, the whole thing is just made up. the whole of art history and what we think we're supposed to do, where we're supposed to go, and what we're supposed to follow is just a structure. You might find that it's not for you at all, and you've got a completely different journey with your art practice to go on. Yeah, there is nothing that's saying this is what you have to do to be a real, authentic artist, no matter how much Instagram or whatever else tries to sell you that idea. And also, you can't win as an artist. And this is good news too. You know, there are barriers in the art world. There are hoops that you're going to have to jump through in some ideas. Like Will Jarvis was saying, there are areas where you will have to play the game, but it's up to you how much you do that. You know, there is entrenched nepotism, racism, misogyny, class issues, privilege, whiteness, art history that privileges a specific type of person. And, you know, genocides going on in other countries, crazy tariffs going on over here, shit governments. There's so much that is out of our hands as artists that it is difficult then to keep operating. But the important thing is that there's nothing that says we have now won, we've now done it. And while we see these sort of small changes happening in the art world, the point is to make art in line with your values. The artist and writer Amy McNee puts it really well in this idea of you can't win as an artist in her amazing new book called We Need Your Art, Stop Fucking Around and Make Something. Highly recommend getting that book. And she puts it like this: artists are not like athletes. We cannot win gold. We cannot beat other creatives. We cannot come first. Sport is objective, but our craft is subjective. Creating to be the best is a waste of energy. Instead, create to connect with the people who need you because they're out there. Create in your own way because there is no right way. Take the pressure off and focus on your unique brand of magic. Wow, I mean, you could almost log off now. That says it all, really, doesn't it? But this is what being an artist is about. Not having a certain, oh, yes, this is what the art world has granted me a status of success. We're creating, trying to be the best is a waste of energy. Instead, we're creating primarily to connect with the people who need us. And they are out there, is what Amy McNee is saying. So then, that's the foundation, right? That's my manifesto foundation. Now we're going to get into these tools that go in. That's the toolbox, okay? I'm not going to give you, I want to be realistic about all this. I want you to make art in line with your values, and I'm not going to lie to you and say if you follow this 10-step system I'm going to give you and you'll definitely be successful, because it is all a strange game. But we don't want to lose ourselves in that game. So we're keeping in line with our values, remembering that we can't win, but we can connect with people. And that's where we want to be. Okay, then. So that's the toolbox. Let's get into the toolkit. What tools we will need to be as successful as we can in the art world and to be able to connect with our audience that we want to. Okay, it's giving our work the best chance. Okay, so I'm going to split it into two halves. On one sort of compartment of the toolbox, the left-hand side, let's say, is what I'm going to say the art. And that's everything around what makes your art possible and what makes it could be seen in the best way it can. On the other side, I'm going to say is the admin. This is the behind the scenes stuff that feels fucking hideous at first. But when you do it and you get good processes in place, I promise you everything becomes easier and faster, and you're able to take the opportunities and make the opportunities that you need to. Okay, so let's start with section 1 of the toolkit, which is the art. The first thing that's going to go in the art side of your toolkit is quality artwork. I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but you cannot skip this part, okay? You cannot, anything I teach you today cannot go above quality artwork. Yes, you can market the shit out of really bad art. We've talked about that already on this channel. Not going to name any names this time, but I think you all know what I mean. But we're not talking about marketing ourselves here, regardless of how good our work is. We're talking about you committing time to your practice, to learning, growing, critiquing, and communing with the materials. Yeah. Nothing you're going to learn in this course is going to go above that. So, um, you know, you have to be thinking that you need to give yourself a chance to play, to have space to experiment, and to have people invited into your world to discuss those experimentations. Yeah. So, the amazing book Art and Fear, which I've quoted a few times on this channel, by the amazing David Bales and Ted Orland, which has just recently got a reprint, which is an amazing book. Highly recommend getting it. They talk a lot about the experience of creating and making art and this creating space for play. I'm just going to read you a little quote here, which I think is really great. Art is like beginning a sentence before you know its ending. In making art, you need to give yourself room to respond authentically to both your subject matter and your materials. Art happens between you and something, a subject, an idea, and technique, and both you and that something need to be free to move. So this first tool is so important because you need to create that freedom, that space for you to be able to play and create outside of a capitalist system, outside of the idea of selling. You've just got to be able to commune with your materials. And they go on to say in this chapter that tolerance for uncertainty is the prerequisite to succeeding. I love this quote. And again, you could log off here almost. This says it all again. We need to build as a tool as we create quality artwork, a real tolerance for uncertainty. That's in both our opportunities that may or may not come and in the process of making art itself. Some really strong reminders that I want you to take away with you today. Okay, so that's quality artwork. Second tool for the art side of the toolkit is a studio space. Now, I did a long episode about studio spaces recently, so I'm going to post that up soon. But I want to do a light touch on the main themes of that for this course. And I want you to understand that, again, a studio space doesn't need to look like a certain type of thing. Yeah. You need to really be asking yourself, what is a studio space for as an artist? Yeah, not so it can something you can flash on Instagram, or not so you can feel like a real artist because you've got this big massive warehouse space, but you're actually blazing money down the drain because you can't afford it. Yeah, in a way, I want you to think about it in, well, like art history is sort of burdened by the idea of the studio, that it's supposed to be this intensely charged, genius creation environment, and I should be there all the time making this incredible work nonstop. But if you think in that way, it can kind of start to get quite scary. Or the idea that, yeah, a real artist would have a big studio. That's would make my work real or valuable or something like that. And again, you sort of turn it back on yourself and say it's a problem with me, where actually it's just capitalism again rearing its head and saying you need to earn this certain amount of space to be real. Remember, we have no idea what level of privilege other artists are in when we see things on Instagram like ginormous studios with people wearing cool clothes or doing thirst traps in front of their massive paintings. We don't know how they've got there, and so we can't compare ourselves to that, as privilege and wealth is very much hidden from public view for the eye of authenticity, right? It should be easier to get a studio. Yes, it should be easier for artists to create space. But while it's not, and while you still have to be an artist, while you still have that burden in you, I want you to begin to think about a studio as something that can be seen as seasonal or flexible. Okay. So, for example, my studio journey has been seasonal in all types of ways. When I first moved to London, got married to my partner here, we lived in a really crappy old council estate, and it was like going to be knocked down, and therefore we got it, cheaper rent, and so therefore we had like an extra room, and I just painted the floor, and that was my studio for 2 years. Then when we got kicked out of there, I set up a studio in the back of a church, like an old church hall building, and they would let me have that space for cheap if I taught art to the Sunday school kids, through the holidays. And then during COVID, I had a studio just on the kitchen table, and I made smaller work in that season. So it was different, and I started opening up different doors because of that. And then now recently, I'm sharing with another artist who's left the country for a while, and I'm getting the studio space cheaper because of that. So you can see it's seasonal, it's up and down, and it's come based on what I need to be doing at the time. Other ways you can think about it are, there's another artist I've been following recently who's amazing, and she has not got a studio at the moment, but she's got a very small garden, and a little back garden. And while her house is all like going through these major works, she is making art exclusively around this drying rack that she's got in the garden, and she's making all her sculptures directly on that, and it's creating some really interesting work. So she's seen it as a season of, okay, I can't afford a studio at the moment, I've got no access to where I am, so I'm just going to make weird stuff in the garden. And it's opening up so many doors, and she's posting about it, and it's creating a really interesting buzz around her work. It's so unique. Another friend of mine, Grace, another artist, she doesn't have a studio at the moment, and what she's doing is organizing like a monthly gathering in her home where she asks artists and performers and writers to bring work and stick it around the walls of her house and do critique that way. Another way you might want to think about studios is that you might actually not want a permanent studio space, but depending on the type of work you're doing, you might want something more like a hireable space. So my friend Amy Lung, she makes work in ceramics. A lot of the time she doesn't have a permanent studio, or a massive ceramic studio to work with. So what she does is, as and when she needs to fire or finish work or do certain things like glazing, she'll hire a chair and a section of shelf in a ceramic studio for a month. There's plenty of those spaces around, and maybe do some courses while you're there and get fire stuff with other people. And then, and you can do the same with like metal workshops and wood workshops, and even places that do 3D printing or computer programming. You can see it as, this is what I mean about seasonal and flexible. Yeah. But the important thing overall is to create some sort of space to be able to commit to your practice, a psychological space, whether it's the corner of a bedroom, whether it's a screen, when you go to a certain cafe, whether you can afford a studio or not, some sort of psychological space where you are safe to have that play, that authentic play with your work. And also somewhere that you can leave as well. So you say, I've finished for the day. Even if it's just a sketchbook, I close it, and I can do something else for a bit, because we need that space from our work too. Okay, the next tool in the art side of the toolkit is good photographs. We've made the work, we're happy with the play, we've got something, we've hit there, and we need good photography. Now, this is, you might be surprised to hear this, but this is often one of the last things that artists think of. I've run 2 gallery spaces in London, worked for multiple galleries and museums, and I cannot tell you the amount of shit photography I see coming from artists. I'm talking about blurry, fingers in the way, not lit, using the wrong lens so that painting edges are warped, all this kind of thing. And just a basic level of decent photography speaks volumes. It pumps your work up to such a higher level so quickly, because you will not believe how many applications and prizes and residencies people send in bad photography because they think of it as the last thing to do. So how to get away from that? The important way is to invest in yourself, okay, when it comes to doing photography. Now, I'm not saying we hire a photographer and it costs us £2,000 or something like that, but there might be a clever way of doing it. Maybe a photographer and you can do a skill share. Maybe you give them a piece of art or something like that, or do something for them and then they'll photograph for you. Maybe it's in an exhibition, and we'll talk a little bit more about this next week when we apply these tools to going and making opportunities out there. But a lot of times I've done it with others where, we've done a big show all together, and because there's 10 of us in the show, we can all pitch in a bit of money and hire a photographer because it doesn't cost as much when it's separated between all of us. Yeah. Another way you can do it is to simply hire a camera yourself. Now, this is again, if you feel confident in doing that, yeah, not just give it a crack. If you haven't got those skills, try and find someone else who can do it for you. But in hiring a camera, what I've done this loads of times before I could afford the camera that I am streaming onto you now. I used to, make a bunch of work. I'd obviously take pictures on the phone, touch them up, make them look as good as I can for Instagram and stuff like that. But when it comes to applying for things and sending things to galleries, you need some high quality imagery. So I would get all my work together, know that I've got 3 or 4 pieces ready that I want to photograph. And then I would go on an app, like there's an app in the UK here called Fat Llama, and you can hire a camera, even like a camera and a lighting setup with a tripod for like 15 quid for 2 days or something like that. And it's absolutely perfect. I cycle to the place, I pick it up, I do all the photographs, and then I take it home. And then I've got this high quality batch of stuff. Tips for shooting your work in that way as well. What if I haven't got a studio? What if I can't, I haven't got a big gallery space to work? You can make it work. One of my friends, when we were at our university, he was making quite large scale sculptures, and he was making a lot in his room. And what he used to do was just clear everything out the way, put a coffee table, iron a bed sheet, put it over, put the sculpture on top, and photograph it in the corner of the room, in some decent sunlight, and then touch it up, and it looks brilliant. You can make it work for yourself, but the important thing is that it's decent and high quality. So let me show you an example here. So recently a gallery's asked me for, can we see some works in progress for a show that I'm going to be in London in a couple of months' time, right? So the light wasn't very good in the studio. I didn't have my main light with me, someone else was borrowing it, but I had my camera. So what I did was, as best with the daylight that I could, I just snapped a couple of shots. Now, as you can see here, the light is looking very low. If I sent this out, this would show like a lack of professionalism, and that maybe I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to photography. You can see here, the floor's looking very dirty. There's this weird wall on the edge. There's a plug socket there, which is interfering with how the work is looking. There's loads of drill marks in the wall. So I just take this photo and I touch it up. And this is not like expensive software. You can do this on, Google Photos these days and things like that. And then I touch it up so that it looks like this. Yeah. And if you see a little side-by-side shot, you can see the difference. And here I've simply brightened the image, brought the colors forward. I've used a little magic tool to get rid of the marks on the wall, to get rid of the plug socket stuff on the floor. And this is brilliant. This is much better and good enough to go to a gallery to see what I'm up to, for a work in progress. If it was, for my website or for the catalog, I might go even further, and really touch it up even more, or as we say, get a photographer in. But, this is not difficult stuff, but it's things that people forget and they think about so, towards the end of everything. Yeah. Also, it's really important when it comes to this too. The reason I'm saying this about photography, and this is what I want you to take home about photography, touching up photographs and photographing well is not about showing off your photography skills. It's not about showing the gallery that you are a great master photographer. What it is that when you've got a good photograph, well lit and touched up, it makes the photography invisible. Does that make sense? It makes the photography invisible. And you can see the difference here. Look at the photograph on the left here. It's clear that it's a bad photo. The photograph on the right, you forget that it's a photo and you see the sculpture first. That's the thing you see primarily. You're wanting the invisibility of the frame so that the art speaks the most. It's about giving your work the respect that it needs, to be out there. Why waste all the time and effort that you've put in only to photograph your work in a shit way, or extract the digital file too small, etc., etc. Yeah. Last thing I'll say on this is that when I was at university, there was a really good tutor of mine called Ian Munro, and he talked a lot about the importance of retouching photographs. And he had this great phrase, which was, invisible thread is not invisible. Yeah. And by that, he meant if you're hanging work and say it's a sculptural piece and you want it to be in the middle of the room, don't just think, oh, I'll have it floating and I'll just use some invisible thread and tie it up. And no one will see that because that's just like an afterthought. But of course, to everyone else, it's so obvious. People think, is that part of the work? And when they see this like shit bit of hanging tied up, and it's the same when a piece is hung wonky in a show or not correctly. And I've been to so many university shows where it's clear they haven't taught the basis of hanging and showing work well. Again, they've done it as an afterthought. But of course, it's the main way that people see your work. Photography, usually on social media these days or on your website, which we'll come to in a minute, and also in a gallery space. But we're treating it as if it's the last thing, but for viewers, it's the first thing. I've been to university shows, like I say, where paintings are hung wonky, where the information or the title of the work is stuck on the work. It doesn't make sense, but all these things are forgotten and put last. So invest in your photography, invest in the way that you're going to display your work. And it's not just for your website on Insta, and we're going to talk about filing soon. It's about when you get those opportunities, when those things come and the gallery says, oh, could you send me a high quality image of that work? That you're not panicking like, oh shit, I haven't got any of this ready. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. That you go, yeah, it's in a file. I've already done it. I've already made it. Bang, yeah, I'll send it to you today. The gallery sees, oh, they're professional. They know what they're doing. Oh, they've got good photographs of their work. Puts you in much better stead. I hope that makes sense, friends. Okay, we're coming to the last section of the art side of the toolkit, and that is websites and socials. We're going to talk a bit more next week about applying website and socials into the art world, but I'm going to talk with you about the basics of you using a website, what it needs to have, and you using socials and how you can use them. So let's just go over that shortly. With a website, again, professionalism speaks volumes, and it's the same with photography in that a good website makes the website itself invisible. Yeah. The problem is when a lot of artists try and give it a go and do something kooky and different and artistic, it makes it impossible to actually see the work for what it is and engage with it properly. Yeah. What you want is simple, clean, where you've got the artwork up front and easy to engage with. Again, if you can't do this, see if you can collaborate with a designer. If not, use a quality website builder like Squarespace, ReadyMag, Webflow. There's so much good stuff out there that you can use these days that isn't, Wix or something like that. And there's so much creative stuff and there's so many good templates already there. Just use something that already works. Yeah. Make it easy for yourself. And so here's an example, Alejandro Havalois. Again, clean, simple. You can see the work up front, and his work is very minimal. So the website itself is minimal. Yeah, makes sense. Here's Rosie Reed, who I just interviewed recently for my One Artist, One Artwork video series, which you can also find online. She's an amazing sculptor, and her sculpture is very much more visceral and colorful. So she's got a bit more color, a bit more playfulness. But again, it's not overtaking the work. The work is central to what's being seen. Also, someone like Magali Royce, who's an amazing sculptor, and her work is all about fine details and these little materials. So there's loads of close-ups. And you can see here, very, very simple, numbers across the bottom so you can swipe across the work. The information is clear. The dates of the work are there and the materials as well. So it's all obvious to the person. And again, galleries are going to be looking. Galleries are going to be coming to your website. And if you've got shit photographs that don't load properly, that are not easy to find and no information, they're just going to be like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're doing. People are going to be looking at your stuff behind the scenes. You need it to be ready to go. Here's Oliver Lunn, and a lot of his painting is about texture. So he's got that really clear way for you to see the texture of his work straight away up front. Someone like Lyra Kellerman, another artist I've interviewed for my series, who's all about these very visceral bodily sculptures and intimacy. So she's got a big fat picture of a close artwork that you can, again, skim through. You get a sense straight away of what it's about. And then someone like Holly Hendry, who's a much more established artist. A lot of her work is abstract and colorful. And she's got a simple thing where you scroll over the work and the background color changes. It's just nice. It connects to her practice. But again, it's nothing too flashy, not crazy animations that are going all over the place. There is an argument to be made that if you are sort of like a digital artist and maybe the website is almost like a part of the work experience, then yes, we can do things like that. But remember, we've got to have an ease of way for people to access. It's easy for us to update, but easy for gallerists to be able to see what you're doing. Alongside that, you want to be thinking about having on there, like I said, your work is nice and clear, a CV and about section. We'll come to CVs in a minute. Your artist statement, which we'll also come to in a minute. An easy way to contact you. So many people forget to put an email address or a sign-up form if you want to do something like that, so you're not putting an email out online. And again, all these website makers have that already. And then an easy place to connect with your socials, whether that's Twitter or Instagram or wherever else. It's just all there, ready to go, ready to find, and easy. Okay, let's do a little bit on social media as well before we finish this section. So, social media is, I guess, sometimes a bit dreaded by artists and how they use it. Let me give you an example of a couple of ways you can think about it. These guys here are Benjamin Murphy and Nick Thompson, who run a brilliant gallery in London called Delphian Gallery. They have amazing and very interesting social media presence, which is all about sharing the work of others, which is really interesting, as well as the work of gallerists that they're showing. And they've got some really good things to say in their book, Navigating the Art World, which is highly recommended. And I'll give this in my list of books at the end of next week's session. Professional Practice for the Early Career Artist. They've got a chapter called Effective Social Media, How to Capture Your Audience. Okay, so this is just brilliant. And I'm going to read to you a few sections from this. They talk about two types of feeds that you can use as an artist. The first is what they call the visual diary. Let me read you a bit of this. The visual diary approach treats your feed as if it's a journal or an online sketchbook. These kind of feeds are quite personal, which is useful when you're trying to appeal to collectors and patrons who want to know a little bit more about the artist's personality before they try and invest. This is also a good feed to utilize if you're hoping to attract galleries and curators, as these contacts want to look not only at your work, but they also like a little more information about you as a person, your interests, your methods of working, your inspirations, and your works in progress. This kind of account is conducive to garnering a lot more genuine engagement, really important to note, and often promoting actual discussion within the comments. And they go on to say that it's really important to honor when people have taken the time to message you and say, I really like that work, and get back to them and start to connect with them. For a lot of early career artists, this is the place that you need to really start using social media, seeing it as a visual diary. Now, we're not saying that, like a teenage diary, we're talking about every piece of shit that we think of, but letting people behind the scenes, because that's all about this sort of interesting access where people understand who you are and what your processes are. And that's the point of you being an early career artist, is you developing that. The second one, as we get further on in our career, is the gallery approach. And they talk about it like this. The gallery approach is the kind of account that shows very little personality in favor of expertly taken images of work on pristine gallery-like walls. The captions are often formal, sometimes written in the third person, and the artist's voice is largely absent. This account is successful when the artist is already established and doesn't need or want this direct connection with their supporters. It's also good for practitioners like commercial illustrators or designers, because learning more about the personality isn't as important for a commissioner or a collector. Both types of accounts can be useful for different reasons, so you should spend some time deciding which suits you and what you want to achieve the best results. So I would say we're thinking early on visual diary, gallery approach, and we're thinking of more of the visual diary. Yeah. So take some time to think about that and do a bit of research. See how others are using their thing as a visual diary and using it well. Not putting every piece of shit work they've done, but letting people into their story, because as we heard at the start, Amy McNee saying it's all about you creating for your community. So how are you going to draw your community in? How are you going to let them know what you're about and what you're doing? So here's a really nice quote from the book as well that I want to read. To use social media in the most efficient way is to bring any follower that you attain closer into the fold. This is what I'm describing about community, to create a like-minded community. This is so important. It's not to, create a perception of wealth or that you're so successful, that you've got a huge studio. No, it's not. It's about creating community. That's where it's all going to happen for you as an artist. Once you have this community, now this is really important, it's the next step, you should strive to extend that community beyond the confines of whatever platform you found them on, whatever social media that is, and towards other more stable platforms like emails and your website. Because what's becoming so important for artists these days is having an email list. And we're going to talk about that more next week when we apply these skills. But what I'll say now is that emails are evergreen. They're going to last forever. Whereas, as we've seen with things like Twitter changing to X, and what can happen literally overnight is that, social medias can be gone like that. We don't have any say. We're not in any control. We are the product when it comes to social media. So having a more solid thing like an email list is going to be really important for you as an artist. But we'll come to that more next week. Okay, friends, we're doing really well. If you want to think a little bit more about social media and its joys and sorrows, we made a really cool episode about that on the Healthy Artist podcast. It was all about how social media sort of manipulates us and how there's literally university programs set up that social media influencers and builders go to learn how to best manipulate their audiences. It's all very open and blatant, and how we need to get out of that process. So go and listen to that this week if you want a bit more insight. I think it's episode 4, is it, that we did? Yeah, episode 4. So that's the art, quality artwork. Nothing trumps that. A studio space, some sort of psychological place to be playful. Good photographs. When you've made the work, you're displaying it in the best way that it deserves in terms of respect. And good website and socials, clean, open. On the website, we're doing on, we're not doing the visual diary approach. The website is clear, straight up photography of your work and your practice and a little bit about you. Socials is where you can lead people into that. Yeah. Okay, let's go for the last part of this, part 1 of this course, before we get onto questions. I'm going to go back to my school teacher days. Everyone take a breath. Do a little stretch. We're doing well, guys. Thank you for sticking with me. There's 200 of you here, which is mind-blowing to me. So thank you that you're all here. And if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to pop them in there. What's Greg Seals saying? He said, I wish I would have started on the email list sooner. I'm finally growing it now. There's a great video on YouTube. I can't remember the name of the person. I will search it up. I'm going to add it into next week's course, so come back for that. And she's got a really nice video on what she calls her calm social media free marketing strategy as an artist. Is brilliant, and it's all about how to build that that email list. So I'll talk a bit about that next week, but highly recommend engaging with that. It's really, really good. You can probably find it yourself quite easily, but if you can't, I'll give you a list to that. So thanks for that, Greg. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And again, it's that evergreen content, because, a lot of collectors, people who are investing in the work, they're not on Instagram scrolling. They're out there in the world seeing art, going to galleries, finding out about you through word of mouth or through a gallery show or opportunities that you're making, and reviews maybe people have written about you and stuff like that, and then going to your website. They're not really scrolling on your socials. My socials is mainly other artists. It's the place to make your community and creators and build shows. It's not going to be a place to sell work. Thanks for that, Greg. I appreciate that. Okay, then. Let's go into this second half of the toolkit before we go to questions. The admin, please do not feel afraid. It's going to be quick and easy, this section, but trust me, this is going to be the thing that just is going to boost all that art side of the toolkit. This is going to maximize it. Yeah. So number 1, filing and archiving. I know what you like, artists. Your screens look like this. I know exactly what they look like. They look exactly like this. Yeah. I had a discussion with this artist the other day who was trying to apply for something. And then, we'd done some photography of her work together. And then she was like, fuck, you have to send me the photos again, because I can't find them. I've lost them. And the names of them are all just numbers. And I don't know where I did them. And I've got to do this application at 12 o'clock tonight, etc., etc. We've all been in that situation, or hopefully you haven't yet, and you won't have to be because of this. But cataloging and filing your work is so important. I want you to go and invest. If you haven't done this already, do it tomorrow. Go and buy a hard drive, a decent hard drive. Even if you have to go into your overdraft, go and get a 40, 50 quid, decent, massive hard drive and start backing up your work. That's all your photographs. That's all your digital pieces, whatever you're doing. That's all the parts of your practice that you want to keep track of. And I'm saying you've got folders in there by year. And then in the year, you've got studio work, you've got photographs of each of your pieces with the names of the piece, even if it's untitled at the moment, something to help you remember. In that folder, you've got a large scale edited photograph already done. You've already done it. You've already photographed it. Then you've got a smaller version, smaller export, so that you can put it on socials or send it more quickly. But you've got a bigger one for catalogs and for websites and things like that. You've going to have to take half a day or a day to make these folders. It's going to feel like a pain in the ass in the moment, but just, I don't know, take yourself to a nice cafe, buy yourself a croissant or something to do it, and just fucking commit to it. Yeah. And I promise you, it will just revolutionize your practice, because when that opportunity comes and that gallerist says, can I have a high quality image of the work? Can I see, works in progress at the moment? Bang, you can send back within the hour, within the day. And what does it show? Professionalism. Yeah. And it shows that you care about your work, and it will be easier for you. Make it easy for yourself. Make this, the art world is fucking complicated and shit as it is. Why make it harder for yourself? Greg says, my screen is chaotic and I have external drives that I have no idea what's on them. Me too. I've been there as well. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I needed to start this process myself, but trust me, it has saved my life. So much work has been misplaced. Yeah, I totally understand that. I've deleted things by accident. I've got whole websites of images that I've lost because I didn't back them up. All these kind of things. Why have these tragedies when we can sort them out? I remember someone putting it as, maybe we just need to take a day every month to do adulting. And that's just all the shit that we don't want to do, bills, taxes, everything like that. And this can be included in that. Maybe you need an adulting art time where you back up everything, you name everything, you get it all there. And trust me, it will take time, but for the future, you're doing it for your future self. That's the joy of it. Yeah. And you'll thank yourself so much. Also, in your art admin side should be an art CV written and ready to go. And also this should be on your website. Now, an art CV is not the same as a job CV. This is not, I'm a great team player and I'm really confident. And here's where I worked. I worked in Subway and McDonald's, and it's not that, okay? What an art CV is basically a rundown of who you are, where you were educated, if you went to university, and all the shows and publications and prizes that you've been part of. So it should look like this. For the top, name, yeah, simple. People forget that. Where you were born, okay. This is and again, if you can share that, please do. It's not absolutely essential, but it is important. After that, where you live and work now. This is really important, particularly if you're moving between cities, or you need to show where you are, again, if it's safe to do so, because a lot of gallerists will be looking up and saying, oh, I'm really interested in this artist. Oh, but they live in a different country, so that means we're going to have to think about maybe showing a smaller piece, or maybe think about shipping. If they don't know where you are, you don't want to let them down by suddenly realizing you can't get the work to them. So think about that. Next comes education. This is university, college, whatever important courses that you've done that are connected to your practice. Then relevant positions. Now, this is not essential, but it's good. Like if you have something, a position that you're in at the moment, like working in a gallery or, something like that, that is really relevant to the art that you're making, do add that in as well. Then below that, and this is the most important, you've got your exhibitions. It should start with shows that are forthcoming. So if you've got exhibitions coming up, you're not actually done them yet, put those in as well. That's really good because it shows the progress, things are coming. And if someone's looking up your art CV on your website, oh, they got a show coming up, oh, where's the gallery? Make a link to it on the CV, and then they can click through and find out information, and they might come. Who knows what it leads to? Yeah. After that, you've got all your shows that you've done previously, and that's solo and group shows. Once you've got to the stage where you've got enough, you can have solo and group in separate sections. If you've done a mixed bag, then just put them all together. I just put them all together at the moment. So I just put them, and as long as they are in descending date order, so the primary one at the top, forthcoming, and then down into history. And then after that, underneath that is prizes, residencies, awards. You might not be at that stage yet, but you're going to be applying for stuff when you've got all your toolkit going. So underneath that, anything you've won, anything that you've been in as an award, anything like that needs to go in there. And that also includes things like publications as well. So if someone's written a blog about your works, put something simple, write about it, put it in there. Yeah. So here's mine at the moment. You can see, as I said, at the top there is the date of birth, the place of birth and where I am living now. You can see my BA and MA there and when I did them. You can see my current role with Exchange Art and also my previous gallery roles. And I do that because I know a lot of curators knew of the gallery previously, but might not have known of me. And then my selected exhibitions. So you can see I got a forthcoming solo show next year in Leeds, which I'm really excited about. I've put that up there, and a gallery I really like. I've got this show coming up in the gallery I was showing you the work in progress shots for, and then the rest of the stuff that I've done this year and last year. Yeah. And important thing with this is keeping it updated regularly. It's so annoying when you haven't done it for a while and then you forgot where the show was, when it was, all that kind of thing. It's really annoying. So as soon as you know you've done a show or you've got it coming up, put it in there. Also, what's really important about that is a lot of artists forget this, and they forget that gallerists and curators and collectors are looking on your site and you haven't updated your thing for 2 years. Oh, the last show they did was 2 years ago. Oh, then maybe they're not active anymore, or maybe they're not. People are looking, as gallerists, they're looking for consistency, someone who is committed to their practice and making things happen. If you haven't updated your CV for 2 years, what are people going to think? Oh, he's not remaking anything now, so keep it updated. Again, make it easy for yourself. Here's another one. Here's Magali Roy's website I was showing you earlier. She's a much more established artist, so she's going a lot longer. So she's also added here at the top there the galleries that represent her, so you can find those easily as well. And then solo and group shows. Brilliant. Okay, 2 more for this section, and then we'll come on to questions. And we're doing okay for timing, I think. Thank you, friends, for listening. So, artist statement. Oh my God, the dreaded artist statement. Now, a lot of artists hate writing artist statement and writing about their work. And I will be doing in the next few months or later this year, a course specifically on writing about your art and writing about artist statements, because there's a big myth and an annoying problem when it comes to writing about work and artist statements, is that artists can't really write about art and that they have to try and write in this fake academic art style, which they hate, and then they get so angry doing it. Yeah. And I think the problem so many artists get angry as well is because they're thinking in that way, but also that they try and write an artist statement that just come to the computer with a blank sheet of paper and think, my work is about blah, blah, blah. And it's impossible. Yeah. No writer does that. No writer in the world goes, today I will write a book, and just starts writing a book. It comes from gathering and ideas and discussions and all these things and notes and drawings, and it builds up. And we should treat our artist statement creatively in the same way as we treat our art practice, as fun and engaging and a space for play, an open space for play, not a space to perform a fake academic art writing style that we don't care about, which no one understands or wants to read, or which basically makes you write about what you're not interested in. That's why people hate it so much. Yeah. So what is the artist statement then? Well, just think about it as a kind of contextualizing of your practice. You're introducing, it's the same as the community building with the visual diary approach of social media. We're drawing people into our themes, our interests, our ideas, not a dictionary definition, not what my work is about, but how to get your work into context. What are the things that surround it and hold it up? What's the cloud of energy that's making your work happen? So again, the worst way to do it is write in one go. Never, ever do this. You will just die doing it. And again, it happens to so many artists. They've got an application to do by 12 o'clock tonight. They haven't written an artist statement. They've got a blank piece of paper, and they're fucking losing their minds because they can't do it. Instead, keep what I would call like an evolving document or like a dumping ground. Yeah. This could be a sketchbook at the start or your phone notes app. And every time you have an interesting chat, every time you're in the studio and you've got someone visiting and they say something about the word that you're like, oh, that's cool. Or you read a book and there's a word that just sticks out and you're like, God, that's a perfect way of describing what I'm trying to do. Make a note of it straight away. Yeah. If you're reading poetry, literature, whatever, absorb yourself in great writing. And if there's stuff that you see, just pull it out and keep adding it into your sketchbook. Then bring it to like a doc, a handwritten doc on the hand typed doc on the computer, and start just dumping it all in there. Yeah. Then when you've got a bunch of stuff going, you can then begin to start writing using all these resources you've already got. It's like having your box of paints ready to go. You don't paint from nothing. You do it from sketches, you do from ideas, from glimmers, from all these conversations. So treat your artist statement in the same way. And you also need to see your artist statement as amorphous and changing. Therefore, you don't want to write one thing and then you've got one artist statement for the rest of your life. Recently my work has taken quite a different direction. So, you want to be committing to seeing it as something sculptural, something fun that you can play and pull things out of and move around as much as you like. And that's constantly going to grow with you. This sort of document full of ideas and energy is just going to keep growing with you, and you'll be able to drop stuff that's not important to you and keep things that are. Also, then, with your artist statement to go in your toolkit, I want you to have a long one. That's the thing that's going to go in the catalog on the website, stuff like that. A short one, you'll get to many art applications for shows, for residencies, and it will say, tell us about your work in 50 words or 100 words. And suddenly it's very difficult to narrow it down. So try and put it into 1 or 2 sentences, the most interesting stuff. Yeah. And you also need a simple one that's more, engaged to the general audience, and then more complex one. If there is a journalist or an art magazine that wants to go that little bit deeper and they're looking for sort of a press release or something that takes them deeper into your work, send them the more enriched, complex, researched artist statement. Yeah. Have all those ready at your fingertips. And again, you've got them already filed. You'll have your file that says artist statement. And in those files, you'll have long, short, simple, complex, CV-based one for this, something for that, whatever you need them for. Yeah. One for a prize, one for this. And then when you've applied for these things and put your artist statement in, save the applications that you have made and put them by year in the right files. Yeah. All this is going to help, because when it comes to applying again, I already wrote that artist statement the other day, so I can just add that in. I've done it already. Again, it comes back to making it easy for yourself. In the end, that's what I want you to have these tools for, is so that you can go out and just fucking crack on and make great shit and not waste all your time stressing when it comes to admin. The last one of the admin side of the artist toolkit before we break and then have questions. And that is money and legalities. There's people logging off in their thousands. They're running for the hills. This is so important. Okay. And, when it comes to money and legalities, there can be a lot of shame for artists. I'm really serious about that. There's so much shame, particularly because social media is doing a number on us as artists. It's presenting artists who have huge amounts of privilege and nepotism going on, and everything making it work for them. And we're all thinking that we need to be like them when we have no idea what's taken them, to that point in their life. So we really cannot be comparing ourselves to other people when we start talking about money and legalities. First of all, I want to say, put in your toolkit a release of shame. Yeah. If you need to get a job and you're not making all your income from your art, that is 100% okay. And there is no shame. A real artist, well, first, so there's no such thing, but a real artist doesn't mean I make all my income from my work. That's just a capitalist model. Where have we learned that from? We learn it from the idea that growth and money is the validator for human experience. You did not become an artist. You did not burn with passion as a child, or just become obsessed with that certain cartoon or that book or drawing or collecting rocks or leaves and looking at their colors because you thought, I cannot wait to get full income from my art. I cannot wait to fall into the capitalist system. This is going to be brilliant. That's not what we're about. We interviewed on The Healthy Artist 2 episodes ago a great artist called Yolanda Shields. And she talked about the moment she released shame from having a job, right? And doing other things. And the idea of releasing shame of her work creating all her income. She said the moment came when she looked at her art and said, "My art does so much for me. It is so glorious. It's a healing tool. It's a way of getting all the interests out. It's bringing community around me. Why do I also need to burden it with it being my full income?" And as soon as she released that, she was like, "Oh, so if it doesn't need to do that, well, then I'm creating my own path. What can I do in the time being?" She starts teaching, getting loads out of it. And the irony, of course, that it feeds back into the work. It ends up giving her opportunities. She starts to work at an arts organization and it ends up getting her a show, etc., etc. Yeah. She starts to work in a coffee shop because she loves repetitive motion. She ends up chatting with people, and she described meeting people in the city and her job, making coffees for these city workers, just making her think, God, I'm so glad I'm not you, which is hilarious, isn't it? But I know the understanding of wanting to make your full income from your art is about saying it's because it's all I want to do is make art. I don't want to do a normie regular job. Yeah. And the reality is that most of us just are burning inside to only do art, but it's not the world that we're in, unfortunately. And there are small changes coming. It should be easier to be an artist, but at the moment it's not. There's so much fucking shit going on in the world, as we've described earlier, and so much is out of our hands. But when you know you have to be an artist, there are ways of making it work and seeing things as seasonal. There'll be seasons of making an abundance in the work, and there'll be seasons of sowing seeds and working and bedding down for the winter. Just see it like that. When we see it as a continual progression of success that grows and grows and grows, that's just capitalist business minded thinking. It's all about, expanding the profits. That's not what we're about. Our journey is not linear. It's up and down like this, or circular and constantly moving. And that is a good thing, friends. Yeah. So release shame around getting a job. When it comes to pricing your work, and I will do a longer course on pricing work, and to talk a bit more about it next week as well. But if you're confused about pricing your work, I want you to base it on your peers. That's the most simple thing, not random stuff from your head, not what the size of the painting is. I'm not into that, like how much materials you've used, because that doesn't work, because as you get better at making art, you get faster. So that doesn't make sense. It doesn't, it's not about the length of time you spend on it, because then that's doesn't work. It starts to reverse. And a really good way of pricing is just looking at what people at your age and stage are doing. Yeah. Whether that's going to galleries that are local to you and seeing what stuff is selling for, using that as your guide, or, just simply asking people, like, what do you think I would charge for this? What do you charge for something like this? Can you help me? There's absolutely no shame in doing that. Yeah. That has helped me. I did that recently for these new works that I've sent to this gallery. I was chatting with another artist who's worked with them before and saying, what do you think? This is my range that would make me feel like not resentment, but also what's the reality of the market at the moment? What are you selling for, etc., etc. Next is your taxes. Please don't leave. Taxes. Everyone hates taxes, but it's important to do them on the go. Yeah. Keep records. Again, if you've got your filing system set up, when you've invoiced for something, when you've made a sale, all of that, put them into your files ready to go, and do it as you go. I've already done my taxes for this year, even though I don't have to do them by January. I know I'm such a cool guy, but it's because I had them already ready. And if you can, hire an accountant. Yeah. I'm not saying that you have, a personal one and, spend thousands of pounds or whatever. What I do is I use a service called Tax Scouts here in the UK. It's basically just a flat fee. You pay £180 and I just send everything to this guy. And I'm like, here it all is. Please sort it out. And he sorts it, files it, and it's usually done within one day. Yeah. And that is, as long as I've kept good enough records and I've kept everything together, then it's easy, and it's worth 180, 200 quid to do that. I use Coinly as well for my digital work, which creates a document that you can send in the UK to the HMRC. That's the where you send your tax reports, and other countries as well. They can do different documents, and it's easy. And I just put it in the file, and then I remember I have all my taxes set out by the year, so I can come back to them easily. Yeah, and then as in connected to that is that money should come. You should put money aside from every sale that you make. Remember that the sale, the 100% of the sale is not the 100% of the money you get. You want to be taking that 17.5% or whatever it is at the moment out of each sale and think that is not part of the sale. You also want to price your work according to that percentage as well. So thinking about that and putting that straight out and into a savings account. So many artists I know have to do payment plans because they didn't keep up the savings. And I also know it's fucking hard, friends, at the moment to do that, but do it as best you can. Last year I had a payment plan because I lost my for other job no, this was 2 years ago. Sorry, I lost my other job during COVID, and we'd suddenly just moved into a new flat and we had to burn through savings. It happens, okay? It's seasonal, but do the best you can to put money aside each time. Know your tax breaks as well. Do your research. Talk with your accountant about, like, what can I do? You can get money off your studio. You can get money off your materials. You can get money off the amount of electricity you need to use for doing meetings and live streams like this. Everything, there's clever ways of doing it, and there's lots of websites out there in the UK. There's one called ArtQuest, and that has so much good stuff about knowing your rights and knowing all the clever things that you can do with tax to make things easier for yourself. Spend a day adulting and learning these things. You can also think about registering as a company, especially if things are getting bigger. This really helps with tax and also to keep costs separate from other jobs that you might be doing. So having a business account is a really easy way of keeping all track of just art stuff. Because when it's mixed in with your other account, it's sometimes hard to then remember if you haven't been filing what was where. If you've just got a business account and you've set up as a business, it takes literally 5 minutes to do this these days. You can then keep track of everything so easily. Get an accountant. We've already talked about that. Think about savings and pensions. We're not going to have pensions, most of us, in the future as artists. I do want you to be thinking about what you can squirrel away. And I'd made the mistake in the past of having a good run of sales and thinking, this is it. Life's made. This is going to carry on forever. And then there's a massive market crash, or there's a war started, or there is a genocide, and then everything goes to shit. And suddenly, I didn't put stuff aside in that time, and I feel the burden of it now. Yeah, so these are really important things to do. And also think about how you can apply for awards, prizes, funding. Take that time to search up artist opportunities out there to see if you can generate funds for yourself. Make it easy, friends. That's the whole point. Okay, there we go. That is what I would say is the artist toolkit. On the art side, quality artwork, studio space, good photos, website and socials. On the admin side, your filing and archiving, your art CV typed and ready to go, your artist statement done in a creative way, and your money and legalities set together and ready to work for you to make everything easy. Okay, so let's see what questions we got. Got a great one here from Greg. How do you usually go about making first contact with galleries? I'm not an established artist yet, indeed, but I'd really like to start putting myself on their radar and hopefully begin building meaningful relationships with the people behind them. First off, it's a great question because you're already thinking about things in the right way, building meaningful relationships. You're not thinking, so I can get hold of their gallery list so I can, start making sales forever and things like that. I'll talk a little bit about it now, but next week's class, I will go into this a little bit more. I also made an episode on this channel of how do I get my work into galleries, and I also did one the week after about how to make sure my exhibitions succeed, which I haven't uploaded yet after the stream, but I will do that on Monday. So you'll have both of those to look at, Greg, and anyone else over the week before Thursday, if you like, and that has like a lot of information in it. But first off, I'll answer it now as best as I can with the time that we've got left, just to give you some things to think about. First thing I would say is actually, before you even think about getting into galleries and shows, is actually just thinking, what is an exhibition for? Why do you want to be in a gallery in the first place? Why do you want to show your art? What is that about? You want to have the kind of motivation where you're thinking, is this actually relevant for me to be doing this? And therefore, what kind of space do I want to be showing in? And that will help us, because when we've got that intentional view, we're much more likely to be connecting with galleries because we know what we want out of it. So that looks like beginning with thinking about researching the galleries that are most interested in the kind of things that you are already doing. And the best way to do that is to look at the artists that you love, that are either your peers or a little bit ahead of you, and start to see, where have they been showing? What have they been doing? Go to their website, look at their CV with their list of shows, as we talked about today, and see, do a little bit of stalking. What galleries have they shown in? If it's somewhere that's local to you, start turning up to that gallery. And I don't mean turn up with your business card and start taking over. Yeah. Just start to turn up, chat with people there. If the gallerist was there, start asking questions about them and their work. Again, we'll talk a bit more about, ways of doing this next week. But it begins in that solid research and looking at the gallery that's right for you, because so many artists just end up sort of scatter firing and wasting their time, sending their digital piece to a gallery that only shows 20th century photography, and wasting their time. And it sounds stupid, but as I say, working in galleries before, we get those messages all the time, get that kind of stuff all the time, where people clearly haven't done the research. Yeah. So that's how you begin. Yeah. Other ways is thinking about using social media and stuff like that. Well, if you're doing it in this visual diary way, that doesn't just mean you in your studio on your own. That also means the shows you're seeing. If it's a gallery that you like, retweet or post on your social media about the show. Saw this show last night, it was great, here's a few great works. Tag the artists in the post. That artist might then say, oh, thanks for that. You start chatting with them. Great, how was it? How did you end up getting this show? Oh, brilliant. This is my work. Oh, I really like your work too. And you never know. That's how it starts. It's all about that creative community and your peers. Yeah. You can also look at if galleries are taking submissions or not. Don't just cold call or email galleries if they don't take submissions, and it says that on their website, because it will show that you are a dickhead and you didn't read what they put on their own site. Yeah. But a way might be that they do an open call or something like that. I'm going to be in a show in a gallery in not too long that I've been turning up to shows there for nearly 10 years. And I'm not saying every single time I've gone to the show, like I've been like, oh, please give me a show, and like hoping and hoping. I've just been turning up there over the years because I just love it. I think it's a great gallery. And, that's how it's worked. And now eventually at the right time for me, after having a real good chat with the curators over the years, one of them said, I just really want to put a piece of yours in this show. So that's how it starts, isn't it? More on that next week, but that's a great question, Greg. And you've got a follow-up to that as well, which is, should I focus on contacting digital galleries that connects to the NFT space? I have worked minted on Solana, that's a digital blockchain, and other chains as well. I think it really depends, again, on cycling back first and asking what it is about exhibiting that you actually want. Is it to build a CV? Is it to challenge yourself to try something new? In fact, let me just read you something quick. This is a great book, What They Didn't Teach You at Art School. This is by Rosalind Davies and Annabelle Tilley, two UK artists and writers. It's really good. And they've got a little section here on exhibitions, which I put into one of these other videos, but it's just really... really, really good. So I just want to read it to you here in answer to your question. So talking about reasons to exhibit. So they're saying, what are the reasons to exhibit? One be to create and realize new work, to challenge the way you develop your work, like doing a site-specific or completely new piece for the development of your work, to expand your networks, to try and get press coverage, to help build a professional reputation, so adding to the CV, to forge a community of artists, to broaden your horizons, to learn how the art world works, to gain feedback, to sell or work or attract a commission. So there's loads of reasons why. So I just get up front as in, what's the reason you want to be contacting galleries? It's not just like to have exhibitions for random. You want to be contacting places that are going to do justice to your work. So I would say, There's so many good digital galleries out there. I would say, yeah, start reaching out, and but primarily start sort of tweeting about their work or putting stuff out about their work and turning up to the shows if they've got physical shows, or if there's talks online, turning up and asking questions, posting about things. That's how you get on people's radar, because it's all about community, isn't it? If they keep seeing, oh, this guy, he just keeps, like, sharing stuff out, he's really generous with his time and with his space, then that's how it begins. So yeah, totally. But also, don't limit yourself to that. There's a big wide art world out there, and as I said, there's many types of art worlds, as I was saying at the start. And it's about you finding your space in it. So there's loads of really good digital galleries out there at the moment that are in physical brick and mortar buildings. So yeah, just see what's local to you, and if you're not finding it, do it yourself, Greg. Set up your own space, make it happen. Why not? Doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be massive. It could be in a shop window, it could be a screen in the back of a car, it could be in your own house, it could be something you hire and run a show with a couple of other artists. Then you've got it. You've got a show on the CV. You did it. If you did 3 of your own shows in the year while you're starting up, then brilliant. That's 3 more for the CV. Again, we'll talk about that more next week. But I hope that begins to answer your question. Oh, thanks so much, you said, for the feedback. Appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please remember that next week, Thursday, we will be doing the second part of the Artist Toolkit. That is on the 19th of June, 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. EST, same again. Thank you so much for everyone for joining in. Nearly 250 of you in here, which is wonderful. Appreciate you all being here. Any questions over the week, feel free to DM me on Twitter or Instagram, wherever you're following me. And yeah, reach out and I will add more in, that's relevant to you. And these are the starting to build our own community here, of like-minded artists. So again, if there's things that you want to go deeper on, let me know and I can start creating things for you that are going to help you. Either way, I hope that you found something good for you in this session today. And I've loved being with you. And thank you so much, everyone. And I will see you next week for part 2. Until then, have a great weekend and go and make something. Yeah, see you later.